Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Welcome into another edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I am Bennett Conklin, joined by Jack Fitzpatrick, and we're slowly meandering our way through fall camp.
I thought that beer open was going to break you.
I could barely hear it. It felt like it was muted.
Oh, well, that's awkward. Yeah, we're meandering our way through fall camp, and we still don't have a clear answer on who quarterback one is, although I think we all can still kind of assume. We have a special guest coming on later in the podcast to talk about Jordan McCloud. He's kind of a QB specialist. He's able to break down Jordan McCloud's game. We'll talk a little bit about Alonzo Barnett and how that quarterback competition is shaping up. And then we'll also talk about how the UVA quarterback competition is kind of shaken out as well. Not that we're overlooking Bucknell, but I think every single JMU's fans' sights are set on the Cavaliers in week 2.
I think that's extremely fair. Extremely fair.
And something else that is extremely fair is that BetOnline is your number one source for all of your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and so much more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games, all available to play right from your phone. Apologies for my dog coughing in the background as well. Head to betonline.ag or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use promo code BELIEVE, that's promo code BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. You're a new bettor with BetOnline. You use that promo code BELIEVE and you'll get a 50% welcome bonus. You throw $100 in, they'll hook you up with a $50 free bet. Folks, BetOnline, it's where the game starts. Don't clap too loud there, man.
We love that. We love sports.
You know what else we love?
Three Notched.
Beer.
We do love beer. And Three Notched, as we mentioned, maybe last week, is that when we announced it?
It was
2 weeks ago, last week. We were partnering with them for another year. We've got them through football and basketball season. We're stoked about that. They've obviously got the tap room in Harrisonburg, which we love. They have some bigger tap rooms across Virginia. What have we gone to? We've gone to Richmond, Charlottesville,
Roanoke.
They now have one. Well, they have one in Virginia Beach. Is that right?
Virginia Beach.
And they just opened a new one in
Nelson County.
I always forget. I know it's near like the Blue Mountain area.
Yeah, it's the one
Very
that's near
cool.
Devil's Backbone and all of that.
Yeah.
I believe it's a distillery too, or they were going to be opening a distillery to go along with it. So some really fun stuff coming from Three Notched. I think, is it time we kind of halfway announce a big thing that's coming up later this year at the Three Notched?
Start teasing stuff.
Yeah, so teasing it away, the App State weekend. We are penciling it down. It hasn't been penned in yet. It hasn't been Sharpied in yet, but we're penciling in a live podcast coming to you from the tap room at Three Notched Valley Collab House in Harrisonburg, Virginia. We'll be talking all about JMU football, JMU men's basketball, JMU women's basketball, and whatever else is happening around the Harrisonburg area and whatever else is happening around JMU sports. The specific date has not been figured out. The specific time has not been ironed out, but we're currently set for that App State weekend. Bennett and I are starting to look for Airbnbs. Three Notched told us we're not allowed to stay in their brewery overnight. We said we'll bring the air mattress. We'll sleep on the couch that you guys have in the corner. But they weren't buying that one, so we'll have to find an Airbnb in the area.
Yeah, we'll look for something. It's shocking they weren't going for that plan.
We said we won't drink any of your beer, we swear. And I think based on our past, especially every time we record one of these episodes, I try and drink a beer. They probably were like, we probably don't need him in a brewery.
Probably safe, right? Probably a smart decision by them.
Yeah. And I don't know. Let's call it last of the beginning ad reads.
Yes.
But certainly not least, a word from our friends over at Christopher William Jewelers.
There's a reason Christopher William Jewelers has been voted Best of Virginia year after year. It's not just one thing that sets us apart. It's everything. It's the selection, extensive and unmatched, with every engagement ring, loose diamond, and fashion jewelry chosen for quality and brilliance. It's the service. From our diamond experts to our master goldsmith, our team shares a passion for what they do, and it shows. It's the atmosphere, both glamorous and laid back. See for yourself why people can't stop talking about Christopher William Jewelers in Harrisonburg and Weir's Cave.
We're pumped to have Christopher William Jewelers as a sponsor for this year's podcast during this football season. So if you're in the area, check them out. If you have any big events coming up, I don't know, you plan about popping a question, you mess something up and you need to fix it with your wife, go ahead and I'll go over to Christopher William Jewelers. I've yet to buy jewelry for a significant other, but if I ever do, Christopher William Jewelers will be the first ones I go to.
If you ever. I agree.
Thank you.
We're stoked about our local partnerships this year. I'm pretty
local partnerships. They've been a blast. And yeah.
Pretty excited about that. That's not Frank. Who is that?
Oh, in the background, I'm watching a friend of mine's dog, Bailey. She's a border collie. She's very cute, very well behaved.
Sorry for everybody. This is only Brian Reese will appreciate this.
Yeah. And also kind of teasing some announcements, getting all this housekeeping stuff out of the way. So apologies if you've bared through all of this and you just didn't hit the skip part to when we actually start
30
talking.
Seconds skip. 30 seconds.
30. We'll be doing live streams coming up here shortly in the next week or two. We'll go to like Wednesdays or Thursdays at 6 or 7 p.m. to do these. They'll of course still live on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts, but we'll also be live streaming it on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Just type in JMU Sports News on any of those platforms. You can kind of get notified when we go live and you'll never miss a beat with that. We'll kind of have, graphics to go along with some stuff. We'll have things that help get our points across a little bit more for the visual medium. So without beating around the bush too much, I know we just took 6-7 minutes to talk about nothing. I think today we're talking about the JMU offense.
Yeah, let's do it. We're doing an offensive preview this week. I think defensive next week. And then I guess what we do, schedule breakdown at some point or like a game by game prediction kind of thing. Yeah. That's always an exciting time of year. One of my favorites, but offense, I took a deep dive for the website. Shout out to the written word, jmusportsnews.com, plugging away there. I like the group. I like the group overall. I don't know if we want to go position by position. What's the best way?
Yeah. Let's go position by position. Let's hold off on quarterback because we're bringing on Stephen Hamner later, QB Spotlight at QB Spotlight on Twitter. So he'll be coming on later to kind of break down a little bit more of the quarterback nuances and everything like that. So let's start with the running backs because it seems like that may be the deepest position group after the addition of Tyson Lawton.
It's a good group, right? I think Kalen Black to me is like the most talented running back in the room. I think he's the most complete runner. I like him a lot. Latrell Palmer is sort of that bruising runner who I forgot, and I guess looked this up when I was doing the preview. He's played in 41 college football games in his career. I always kind of think of him as like somebody they use sparingly at times. It's like, no, he's almost ran for 2,000 yards in his college career. Like he's a very proven, capable back who maybe if he isn't running back one is still very, very good.
I think Latrell Palmer's best position is RB2 or even RB3, not as a slight to him. I feel like as a change of pace back, he is extremely lethal. He's played in 41 games. I remember that Morehead State 2020 game in the spring. That was his sophomore year. So if you think about it, that was a long time ago. And I think he's always had his most success when he's getting 10-ish touches in a game, and he kind of peters off the more touches he gets in a game. But his one probably strongest trait is that availability. He's really never missed a lot of time due to injuries, and it can't be said for Percy. It can't be said for Kalon. We'll see what Tyson Lawton does, but it seems like every year there's an injury bug that goes through the running back room, and it never seems to bite Latrell Palmer.
I guess that's one of the benefits to being 220 and just jacked.
Yeah.
He sort of inflicts the pain maybe instead of facing it. And then Lawton, you mentioned the Stony Brook transfer, super experienced, really good player. So I feel like those are your three that are going to get the most carries. And then you have a handful of names who could sort of supplement sort of as like receiving backs or returners.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Solomon Van Horst has been getting a little bit more work with the running backs than what we expected, right?
He's getting a lot of love from Cignetti, and it also sounded like Cignetti mentioned him when he was talking about receivers. So I wonder if Van Horst, like in the slot, is something we'll see more of, plus maybe a couple carries and returns, because he's one of the faster guys on the team. He's shifty. Like he's a guy who makes sense to get some touches because he's like the, sort of the perfect complement to a guy like Latrell Palmer.
Yeah, we've been doing this podcast for about 5 years now, and I think 4 of those years we've been calling for Solomon Van Horst to be used in the passing game. So maybe this year's the year that it actually happens, because he's not going to be utilized all that much as a running back just because he doesn't really fit the style that Cignetti likes out of his running backs.
I keep forgetting that how productive he was in 2021 as a pass catcher.
Van
Here.
Horst?
Yeah, let me see if these surprise you at all. 33 catches for 338 yards and 5 touchdowns in 2021.
Really? That's the fall of 21?
I believe that was the fall, right? Because 2020 was the...
Yeah, I guess they still scored the spring. Yeah, okay.
He had a...
He got that many catches?
Yeah, I don't
remember it. I think the stats are wrong.
I don't remember that happening either, but that's what they've got listed there. When they give him the ball, he's really impressive. So I don't know. He's averaged more than 10 yards a catch in his career. He's got 54 career catches in 36 games. He's a solid returner. He took a kickback for a touchdown in 2021. I like him a lot, but yeah, I think you had Percy on, right? Didn't Percy talk about how like there's a certain style of back who can be kind of a workhorse in the system, and Van Horst is maybe a little undersized for that?
Yeah. Just because Cignetti likes you to run between the tackles.
Yeah.
More specifically, normally between the guards, like you are running like right up the middle. You're running in a very aggressive part of the field, where Solomon Van Horst is more of that scat back, get him out into space and let him do his work. We saw what he could do, though, against FBS level defenses against West Virginia. Remember that game in 2019 when it was like his breakout performance?
I think he led the team in rushing, which is hilarious. Yeah.
He got the most care because I think Percy was out, and I think there was just like a random injury that came through the fall camp, and he was one of the only like 100%. And I think he was a walk-on at that time too.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a wild thing. Here's a question for you, because I was reading a lot of offseason stuff with various teams in recent weeks. I've yet to see a team that is not pleased with their running back depth. Is running back depth like overrated? I feel like every team in the country has like 5 guys, and I don't want to say that running back's like easy. I just think it's one where like if you're an athletic player, that's an easy spot, like growing up, to be like just give them the football and they run with it. Whereas like tight end or something, you're probably not having a lot of like 12-year-olds that are working into tight end. You might just have like guys who are better blockers that aren't big enough to be off it. Like, I don't know exactly how it worked growing up, but like, I assume there are a lot of, I didn't play football. I'm a scrawny little nothing, but like, I don't know. I just feel like everyone has running back depth. And I feel like every year we talk about like, oh, they've got like,
I think
6
it's
guys.
fake.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's what it is, because like JMU always talks about their running back depth, but there's been years when 2 of the top 4 guys get hurt, and then there's just like a massive fall off to the next guy. It's also weird to me that coaches say that, like with everything happening in the NFL right now around the running back position, how they all just like jumped on a Zoom together to talk about like contract needs and how they're all going to like help each. Like, it seems like there's too many. A college kid should realize, I'm going to try my hand at receiver, or even like a 15-year-old coming up right now in high school. Like when they're trying out for their freshman team, their sophomore team, JV or varsity, they're not going to be like, I want to be the star running back. Like, I think you'd pick like wide receiver, corner. So to me, it's weird that like there's this surplus of talent at the college level that's just like, I want to stick to being a running back. I'll be RB4 and provide depth. If I'm a college kid, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be a wide receiver and see if I can break in that way.
Like a slot guy or something. It's kind of a fascinating topic in general, right? Because like at the college game, you see a lot of teams that could go like 5 wide receivers. You're not gonna have a set that's like 5 running backs.
Exactly. Could you imagine 51 personnel, 5 running backs, 1 tight end?
Wildcat and every receiver on the field is a running back or something. Would that be something?
But running back, I think, is one of the more strong. I think offensive line, it's the second strongest position group coming into the fall.
It's a good one. I think my question sort of related to the depth too is like if Kalen Black goes down, is it still like I love this group, or is it like
Can I see Tyson Lawton before I answer that question?
I think that's fair. I think he's sort of expected to be RB2 with Palmer being the change of pace power. So if you have Lawton competing and playing similarly to Black, then it definitely changes the dynamic of the room.
Yeah, because if it's Kalen Black, drop off Tyson Lawton, or even Littrell, like then I'm going to be a little nervous if Kalen goes down. But if Tyson Lawton shows that what he did at Stony Brook can translate to the FBS ranks, and yeah, I'm all for Tyson Lawton. Moving from running backs into wide receivers. Are you a little bullish on this group after writing this breakdown?
I think I am, just because there's so many names where it's like, even if some guys don't work out, I don't think it totally matters. So Reggie Brown, they feel very confident in. They've said that a million times. They like him. Phoenix Sproles seems like he's going to have a lot of catches, which I think you were kind of on that train last week, where like the offensive system gives kind of those slot-ish guys, where Sproles seems like he'll go a ton of catches. So I think he's going to have a ton. Dollison, everyone on the team has said he's like the fastest, right? Cignetti was mentioning the 22.7 miles an hour. If you can run that fast, you're probably going to get the ball at some point. Like, I don't know what his hands are like, but if he can catch anything, then I think
put him in the backfield. There's some running back depth for you.
Exactly. He's the kind of guy that, has that interesting skill set, or even I wonder if he returns at all. But then there's like 5 other names. So like Elijah Surratt, who's a transfer, or Surratt with the transfer. Taji Hudson is a transfer from ECU. Troy Lewis, also from ECU. Jaden Mines is a redshirt freshman who returns. They like all of them. And then there's a couple of true freshmen that Cignetti mentioned. Maxwell Moss, who has a little more size, from Maryland. And then Ymir Knight, who is Wayne Knight's younger brother. Wayne Knight, one of the running backs, got a little reps.
Running back depth.
Yep, last year. Ymir Knight's high school stats are so stupid. He was the Delaware like Gatorade Player of the Year, whatever his final year. He had like double-digit touchdowns rushing and receiving or something, and was like pushing 1,000 yards in both. So he's like a little Swiss Army knife who can do a bit of everything. I just think there's so many names that they'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm really not worried about this position group. Like, honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if Reggie Brown's not the wide receiver 1. And also, like, whoever shakes out has to be good. Like, there's so many options that it feels like whoever is wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, whoever plays the X, Y, Z in position, they have to be good because they beat out a bunch of these other guys. And like, Phoenix Sproles showed out in the spring game. He was a really good player at North Dakota State, kind of had a weird ending, but was a good player, I think, in 2020 or 2019 for North Dakota State. Dollison, like you said, my man is a speedster. And I don't care if you only catch 50% of the passes. If you're fast enough to be wide open, screaming 30 yards down the field, you are going to get yours. And then I'm bullish on Surratt. I think he can come in and make a huge impact, kind of similar to Tyson Lawton in that he's coming from the FCS ranks to the FBS ranks. The difference is Surratt is much, much, much younger. I believe Lawton is going into his 6th or 7th year of eligibility, where Surratt's, I think, going into his true sophomore year. Balled out at St. Francis. And now you would assume would have a better quarterback, and he may even be one of those high possession receivers. So I like you, I'm really bullish on this wide receiver group. I think they have the potential to be really, really solid. And we've seen Curt Cignetti over the last few years lean into that pass game a little bit more.
Surratt, based on what the bio says, had 13 touchdowns in his true freshman season at St. Francis in 12 games with 4 starts. So I don't even know if they were giving him maybe the reps they should have been giving him, but 13 touchdowns in 12 games is impressive. He was an FCS freshman All-American, first team All-NEC as a true freshman, like clearly just better than that level, I think. So he's definitely got some upside.
Yeah, for sure. And a guy that kind of will segue us from the receiver group to the tight end group is Taylor Thompson. We've talked about him a few times. I see him more as a wide receiver for this team.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And so when I was reading your preview and you put him in the tight end category, I got a little mad at you. I think he might be one of our most prolific pass catchers.
Really? You're big on Taylor Thompson, the Charlotte transfer.
I could just be extremely bullish on him just because I watched him play in person. And I did research on him for the one game I called play-by-play for Charlotte football. But I think he fits in well. I think he will split out. I think he'll not be a true tight end. And I think his size will give him a lot of red zone targets. I think he's going to be the red zone receiver. Because when you look at Reggie Brown, you look at Phoenix Sproles, Elijah Surratt, Dolison, I don't know how many of them are necessarily big bodies that can get theirs in the red zone and in the end zone, but I think Taylor Thompson can do that. He had a good amount of receiving touchdowns his freshman year at Charlotte. I think he was all CUSA freshman team, balled out, then kind of as there was more and more uncertainty around the head coach position, I guess you could say. Will Healy, I think, got a little sour. I'm not really sure what happened. His production went down every year after his freshman year. So I think coming into this offensive system will be really beneficial for Taylor Thompson.
I hear you there. I think one of the things that's interesting with tight end is Cignetti in a recent media mentioned the group being young, some of the key contributors being young. Just not really true. Like, I don't know what he's talking about. Like, Kai Wright, the Pitt transfer, is a redshirt junior who started playing at Pitt in 2019. Thompson's a junior. Zach Horton is a junior who played a ton last year. That was cracking me up when he said that. He's like, it's a young position. Wright's only been with us for a year. It's like, well, he started playing football before COVID, like in college. So I don't know how young they are. It seems like a position that's experienced with a bunch of upside and should be pretty solid at the very least.
And Jordan Funk is a junior.
He's been around. They had him a defensive tackle. I guess that seemed like one that they don't have a lot of depth there. So kind of surprised that they would move him to tight end where they do seem to have a lot of depth. I don't know. Maybe they just want another body there or whatever, but interesting there with Funk.
Yeah. And you were really high on Zach Horton last year.
Dude blocks like an animal. I think the last half of the year, he had like 3 to 5 drops that were like hit him in the chest drops that were tough. But he's a solid player and plays with crazy energy. So I like him because it's fun when you have like a 6th offensive lineman at tight end.
That's very true. I think it was that Georgia State game where there were just like so many, or ODU game where he was just wide open, would have walked into the end zone.
He had a couple tough, 1 or 2 against Louisville too, that like it was like a screen pass when they weren't throwing the ball at all and like looked like they had something set up and it just bounced off his chest. And you could tell he was pretty frustrated with it too.
Yeah, I think so do you think Zach Horton will be the tight end one?
I think so, because of the fact that he can kind of do both, where it seems like maybe Wright is more of a blocker and Thompson, like you said, is like borderline just straight up a receiver. So my guess is Horton is one, and then they use the other 2 to kind of supplement. And then if they throw Funk in there, who knows?
Funk's going to be the goal line tight end.
That'd be sick.
So moving in from tight end, we are going to jump over to the quarterback position. We're going to step aside, though, real quick for a break, and we'll be back joined by QB Spotlight at QB Spotlight on Twitter. Stephen Hamner right around the corner.
We now welcome in Stephen Hamner, or QB Spotlight, as he's known on Twitter. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us.
Guys, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk some James Madison quarterbacks.
Yeah, we're excited too. I guess for starters, can you tell us sort of about your QB Spotlight account, where people can find you and sort of what you do on there? I think that's how we kind of came across you, was on Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for giving us a second to share. Yeah, so we've been around on Twitter for, I guess, 3, 4, 5 years, something like that. We started off just covering like group of 5 quarterbacks, like quarterbacks being overlooked. And then we just started kind of progressing to just the whole quarterback landscape as a whole. So we work with a lot of like MLB and quarterbacks, like in the strength conditioning side of things. And so this is kind of our little niche to kind of continue with the football side. So we'll have guests on from current and former quarterbacks to current and former coaches, and this is kind of a big QB hub essentially. So we'll do some film breakdowns, but we've been really transitioning to getting some of these players, people we train, people we don't train, just to come on, just give us insight about the quarterback position. And it's kind of, the quarterback position is just so tough and challenging, so we try to keep it like a real encouraging space, just to kind of uplift all those guys out there, every Saturday and in some cases Sunday, spin the rock. So that's kind of what we do. We have a Twitter, we have a YouTube, and a podcast too. I'm not super great with all the technology and social media stuff. I probably should get better at that. But yeah, that's kind of our background. So it's just a big quarterback hub. As long as it's related to the quarterback position somehow, some way, we say it's fair game here. So that's kind of what we do.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think we found you doing one of those film breakdowns on Jordan McCloud, and that's kind of what spurred us wanting to bring you on here. So I guess just off the top, just a very broad question. Can you kind of talk about Jordan McCloud's game overall and kind of what you like out of him and what you see his strengths are that he can bring to the JMU team?
Yeah, absolutely. I think two things that stand out of why there's potential to be a lot of success from McCloud is one, I think just from the numbers and watching, you can tell he's a coachable kid, right? A coachable athlete. If you look from 2019 to 2020, all numbers improved, right? He really improved from the biggest things were just like the turnover margin, like the TD to interception ratio, and then the completion percentage, right? So I think that shows you that he's coachable and he's able to improve and get better, right? And then number two, if you just look at James Madison's like history of developing quarterbacks as of late, and with what Centeio did last year, right? There's some similarities in that, and so I think that should be pretty encouraging. The one thing with McCloud is like he hasn't played much football, especially as of late, right? Like 2020, he played a few games for Arizona. Oh no, 2021, excuse me, a few games for Arizona. Yeah. In 2022, I don't think he played at all last year. And so we only really saw him in 2019 and 2020, and we saw improvement. But from there, we didn't see a bunch besides some at Arizona in 2021. So I think there's some unknown. But like Centeio didn't have a bunch of starting experience either. He had that 1 year at Colorado State, right, and then came in and lit it up, right. And so the hope is maybe McCloud can kind of follow those footsteps. I know, broad answer, but just like a few kind of perspectives on McCloud.
That makes a ton of sense. Yeah, I think one of the things fans are excited about is sort of similar to Centeio. It looks like McCloud can move pretty well, and certainly, at least at times at USF and Arizona, showed some good decision making. And I guess the limited film or the film that you're able to see on him, what kind of stands out? And you also mentioned sort of that gap in playing. What are the challenges for a quarterback who's maybe made some of those strides, but then deals with injury and has to try to get back to the point where they're healthy enough to sort of build on some of that mobility and things they were doing previously really well?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Kind of like a two-part answer. I think I'll just touch on what you kind of ended with. You can't like replace experience, right? So it's always like, if you don't have it, and it's just tough to really replicate those reps. But you can probably guarantee he was taking as many mental reps as he possibly could, right? So that should be encouraging. At least, even though he doesn't have experience as of late necessarily, 3 games the past 2 years, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
Then at least he has experience prior. He's seen live bullets. He's run around a little bit, right? He's been hit a few times, so at least he has experience prior. And on film, he had a really good year his freshman year running the ball, right? Like he had that was his best year as a rusher, and then you saw him get better in 2020 as a passer. I don't even think he had over 100 yards rushing in 2020, his second year, I believe, but his passing numbers went up. So that tells me he probably doesn't get enough credit throwing the ball as maybe he should. Now, granted, up and down, inconsistent at times, right? Like any young quarterback. But I think the encouraging sign, if you're really trying to take away some positives, is the game against UCF in 2020. He had like 400 something yards passing, 4 TDs, right? So that right there should tell you like, okay, there's like a lot of potential in here. So now it's, if you combine the opportunity to play, and then if you combine that, with the coaching staff putting the quarterback in position to succeed, then when you have a guy like McCloud, then the potential could be there to, hopefully have a similar quarterback production that you had last year. But to answer the question, what you see on film, I think, is you see like the flashes, the potential. Now it's just like having the consistency follow, which comes from experience, right? So,
yeah. Steven, you talked about the Cignetti part of it, not to backtrack a little bit too much, but talk about the growth that Centeio showed from Colorado State, from Temple to Colorado State to JMU, and kind of you half expect that with McCloud coming under Cignetti. Is there anything that you see from the film, anything you see from kind of the coaching aspect? I know you're not watching it, you're not on the sidelines with them or anything like that, but what can a coach do to, I don't want to say inspire, but get that type of talent out of these quarterbacks?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I don't think it necessarily I don't even know if it comes from film as opposed to just like the relationship factor on things. Like if you let the quarterback get into what, these quarterbacks call like your flow state where they're not thinking, they're just rocking and rolling, grab the rock, you're rocking with it. Then like, I think that's when potential is truly reached, right? So if a quarterback's always looking over his shoulder, or if there's like such like rigid, instructions that, okay, this is the only read, I can't look backside, I can't do something, then they're not going to be, let loose essentially. So I think it comes back to just the relationship factor. And then once like the kid really knows, okay, this coach believes in me, I got the rock. I think like potential can be maximized, especially with the coaching staff being able to put the quarterback in the position to succeed. Whatever the quarterback does well, and we've all heard this before, right? You don't want to fit a quarterback into a system that he doesn't fit. You got to make the system fit the quarterback essentially, which it seems like with Cignetti going after McCloud, they know what kind of quarterback fits their system well and what they want. And so there's a reason why they went and got him despite him not playing at all last year and just playing a few games in 2021. So, and Centeo, like we mentioned at the beginning, he didn't have he had playing time, but not like a true starter until 2021 at Colorado State. And the system at JMU fit him so much better, and it just allowed him to be who he is,
Yeah. So
Yeah.
not to jump over Bennett's question.
No,
here,
go
but
ahead.
It takes me right into kind of, there is a QB competition happening for all intents and purposes is what's coming out of camp from every media member is that it is Alonzo Barnett and it's Jordan McCloud. But you talk so much about having your kind of the faith from your coaches. You have that confidence that you're building. How do quarterbacks go through the competition aspect of it while not having their confidence shot? Because speaking for myself, if I'm in the middle of it, like this coach recruited me to come here, I transferred from this other school. I had 5 other schools recruiting me, and now I'm in this competition with a redshirt freshman. How do you keep that confidence up, and what is it that quarterbacks are able to do throughout that competition process?
Yeah, that's another good question. And man, we've had some like really good quarterbacks on the show that have gone into detail on the mental side of things and kind of what you have to do. So I think always preparing like you are the guy regardless. But I think it's such a mental kind of answer that each guy's probably different. Whatever makes a certain guy tick is probably not going to make, whatever makes Jack tick is not going to make Bennett tick, and vice versa. You know what I mean? But that comes down to as a coach being able to kind of massage the situation, if you will, like, hey, we're all grown men in the building. The best man's going to play. It may take us a little while to figure out. It may take us game one to figure out whatever it may be. But at the same time, I think it's like how you manage the personalities. That might be the best answer, right? Like how you manage each quarterback's personalities and kind of keep them involved. Because the quarterback competition is like, the biggest thing I'll say on that is once they go with a starter, like giving him a long leash, you know what I mean? To an extent, like if he's throwing like pick after pick, then I get it. But like you want to give him a leash to like play out of it. You know what I mean? So like I think maybe during the competition, it's like, yo, like let's freaking compete, balls to the wall. But then once you name the guy, I think that's when you can put like your trust in him and say, yo, like it's up to you. Like let's rock and roll. If you have a bad game, bad play, whatever, like you are still the guy. That might be the best kind of answer maybe to that question.
Makes a ton of sense.
That's a great answer. I was interested too. We mentioned Alonzo Barnett being the redshirt freshman. I think he's played in what, he played 2 games last year, Jack, or something, for
I think maybe whatever they could do to keep his red shirt.
Really limited playing time, just mop up duty. And Cignetti keeps mentioning that he needs reps in terms of him making strides. So what are those practice reps, just from your experience working with quarterbacks? Yeah. How valuable are those, and how much can like behind the scenes work that we don't see help in the development of a quarterback?
Yeah, that's extremely valuable. So I played at 2 small schools in college, quarterback, and was not very successful by any means. My only touchdown was to the other team. If that tells y'all anything. And then I got moved positions quickly. But going back to like those practices, just like thinking from like those standpoints, and with the people that we work with, like if you're battling for the 1 or 2 position, like you're gonna get plenty of reps, right? Like they're gonna see you plenty of reps. They're not gonna base their decision off of one practice or off of a spring game. You know what I mean? So I think if you have the mindset that, like this 1 rep isn't going to determine everything, a lot of reps built on top of it is what's going to be the determinant factor. So with someone like Alonzo Barnett. Barnett, that's the name,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. With someone like him, like, because it's funny as a player, like, okay, the coach says I need reps to get better, but I'm not getting any reps, right? Sometimes like that's on the player to like, yo, the reps you do get, like if you gotta be successful or do something good with those reps, you can build and get more reps and get more reps and then get more reps, right? And there's got to be a way to stand out, whether that's getting more reps on the field, asking good questions in the meetings room, watching extra film. So that's probably his best bet to maybe get in the field. Just from, when I was coming on the show, I just was reading the reports from camp and whatnot, and it seems like people are pretty high on him. Otherwise,
Yeah.
McCloud probably would have been named the guy already. So it seems like there's good options at the quarterback position, nonetheless, for JMU.
Yeah, from my perspective, and I think Bennett can kind of agree with this, we think it's a little bit of gamesmanship from Curt Cignetti because they probably have that UVA game circled on their calendar. They don't want to give anything away before Bucknell. And he's done this, I think, nearly every year where there's a quote unquote battle going into camp. Last year, Centeo wasn't the guy until week one. Ben DiNucci, when he was here under Curt Cignetti the first year, he wasn't named the starter, I think, until week one. There was only 1 year where we knew the starter during fall camp, and it was Cole Johnson after he had a fantastic spring COVID FCS year. So we think it's a little bit of gamesmanship, but it is interesting that it seems like it is so wide open at this point. And I guess the question coming off of that is that gamesmanship, does that actually work in your opinion?
Yeah. That's a good question. Maybe not, right? Like like as far as with you have the gamemanship with the team and the gamesmanship of, you're not trying to hold your cards too tight with the opposing team too. But at the end of the day, those coaches got all the info they need regardless, like who's going to be at the quarterback position, right? So
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. I appreciate the insights on sort of the practice reps, because the way they've spoken about Barnett, I feel like from last fall to this fall has changed dramatically, which is obviously hard for fans to kind of see because he's thrown like one career like pass in a game, but obviously he's made some big strides.
He hands it off extremely well. I just got to say,
his in-game handoffs, we love him.
is he's a pretty good athlete?
Yeah, he can move
okay.
a little bit
So
from what we've heard.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, McCloud's kind of the skinnier, faster, twitchier guy, and Barnett's kind of the more stout pocket passer.
Right.
It seems like he has a little bit higher velocity coming on his throws. At least, we're dissecting everything we can from these camp videos that are coming out. But it seems like McCloud kind of has that playmaker in him, and Barnett has more of like I'll stick to the system. I will go read one to read two, and then if I need to, I'll tuck it and run. Where McCloud is just gonna make magic happen at least in my opinion. I'm watching that UCF tape. My man was making magic happen every play.
Yeah, no, it was fun to watch that for sure. And I guess while we've got you here, we sort of glossed over the Bucknell game, but I know JMU fans are excited for the UVA matchup. They had Jay Wolflook was in that quarterback battle for them, and then sort of decided to focus on baseball. So by most accounts, it's Tony Muskett, a Monmouth transfer, is their guy. I don't think we know much about him. I was curious your perspective on him, but then also just the leap from being an FCS starting quarterback to being an ACC quarterback the following season seems like a big jump.
Yeah, I think those are excuse me. I think those are good points. I think with UVA too, it's like they struggled so much offensively last year, and they lost Armstrong. So it's like what change? Like they're going to make changes, like offensively, like schematically, like what they're going to try to do different. And my thought with Muskett, because yes, he had a bunch of success at the FCS level. I believe he got hurt last year, so played like 8 games or so, but was trending to have another good season. But my thought with Muskett is when they went out to get him, like he was, I would imagine he fits their system perfectly. He's a guy that can move a little bit, right? He did a really good job taking care of the football at the FCS level, like put up really good numbers in 2020 and 2021, excuse me. So there's a reason why they went out and got him. So from the outside looking in, he probably fits the system they're trying to do. And he's at least got experience. He's at least seen live bullets, even if it's not the ACC. I think we're starting to see quarterbacks. We've had guys on here kind of touch on this, talk about, you're seeing quarterbacks move up a level and they're having success, right? Like the most recent would be like the Western Kentucky Cats, right? So the cat from HBU that went to Western Kentucky and got drafted, Bailey Zappi, right? And then they had Austin Ani from North Florida or something, a D2 school, jumped up a few levels and just blew it up at Conference USA, right? So I know that's not the ACC level, but still, you're seeing like guys take a jump up and do well. I mean, those are only two schools, so maybe I should have thought a little bit other guys to other schools. But regardless, I don't think it's funny. The quarterback position, I don't think necessarily like once you get the speed of the game, I don't think that jump is as maybe big as maybe some people like to think. Like if you talk to like a lot of these guys, they'll talk about the biggest reasons quarterbacks, don't like quarterbacks go to G5 instead of P5 is they just get overlooked. You know what I mean? Like it's just like an opportunity thing. A lot of these guys can play at that Power 5 level, but for whatever reason, they didn't have the arm, they didn't have the legs, whatever, the height. They just kind of got overlooked. And now we're kind of seeing that trend start to change. G5 cats are going to Power 5, FCS are going G5, so it's kind of like that level, like guys like, hey, he's got experience, he's done well in this offense. Let's bring this guy on and let's see what happens with us. So that's kind of the thoughts on that. How it's going to end up, I don't know. I'm sure, hopefully, for y'all's sake, he doesn't do well in week 2. But for Virginia's sake, I'm sure they're hoping he does. So.
Yeah, week 1s and every other week after 2, he can be an ACC Player of the Year caliber type of guy. But week 2, we're hoping he throws 3 or 4 interceptions and looks like the Monmouth guy that he. Actually, we probably don't want him to look like the Monmouth guy,
right?
Because that was still a great QB.
Yeah, it looked like the offense they looked last year, and then
exactly. There we go.
No, that's a great point though about moving up levels and just getting live reps and things like that. Especially if like JMU fans should realize that, right? If the entire team went from FCS to G5 and finished first in the Sun Belt East, there are players at that level who can move up and be successful for sure.
Right, especially with the coaching that y'all have, and you're able to do that. Y'all's quarterback coach is a freaking no, not quarterback coach. Is he the passing game coordinator? Maybe he's a quarterback coach, but the guy that played at Pittsburgh. Yeah, Cignetti.
Yeah,
man. Yeah, he's awesome. He's gonna be like big time a few years down the road, coaching somewhere. And so
yeah, I'm shocked he's still at JMU. Honestly.
Yeah, it won't be long. I don't think.
I think he's done this with 4 quarterbacks now: Danucci, Cole Johnson, Centeo, and depending on whoever, McCloud or Barnett, if they have another, Player of the Year type of caliber season, that'll be 4 quarterbacks Cincinnati worked with Cignetti on to. Ben DiNucci, he revitalized. He's now an NFL QB. Cole Johnson, and then Todd is in the XFL and could potentially make that jump to the NFL as well. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Dino Cincinnati could be a name to keep an eye out on here in the future.
I agree. There's another guy y'all have on y'all's roster at the quarterback position. I don't think he's in the running for the starting job right now, named Brett Griffiths. So I had his brother on, Mitch. He came on like 3 weeks ago or so and talked about stuff. It was a great podcast. But I was talking to Mitch today that he's the Wake Forest quarterback for those that don't know. And so his brother Brett is on JMU. And Mitch said, hey, like Brett's a better athlete than me. So Brett's the athlete out of the 2. So for whenever his time does come, that just someone say, pretty good athlete that can move around a little bit.
Yeah, it makes sense why they recruited him then. We were kind of curious why they brought in, so much young depth now at the quarterback position.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to monitor. And Mitch is a monster at Wake Forest. So what, he played like 1 game in relief last year or something? He was lights out, and they got a great system for quarterbacks. I'm amped to see what he does this year.
He's gonna light up this year. Yeah, I think it's fun to watch.
Bennett, do you have any other questions?
I think that's it for me.
Awesome. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for taking the time out today and jumping on the podcast. And you can follow Stephen at QB Spotlight. Check out his podcast there. I think all the links to your YouTube, your podcast channel, all on your Twitter, right?
I think so. I hope so. It should be. If not, then I'm doing a horrible job.
But yeah, an awesome follow. I recommend it. So thank you so much, Stephen.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. Go JMU. I'll be pulling for y'all.
Awesome conversation there with Stephen Hamner from QB Spotlight, presented by 3 Notch. Check him out in Harrisonburg at the Valley Collab House. But he was able to jump on and give a lot of fantastic insights about what a QB competition kind of does to the quarterbacks, what coaching does to help out, confidence and help out their play on the field. And just a lot of, I think, insights into the mind almost of a quarterback that I don't think I ever would have thought of.
think that's kind of what we were hoping for, right? Because he interacts with so many quarterbacks to learn more about sort of the mental side of things. And then he touched on a lot of the stuff of McCloud that we kind of know, right? That he's a pretty good athlete, can do some things. I think a good point there that he did improve at South Florida, showed some nice signs at Arizona. So he's somebody that seems like he can kind of take direction from coaches, and we have a pretty good staff. Or JMU we have a pretty good JMU is a pretty good staff in terms of working with quarterbacks. So you would think that if McCloud's the guy, he'll develop well. And if it's Barnett over McCloud, I would expect him to also develop really well over his career.
Yeah, for sure. And the obligatory, who's the quarterback one today?
McCloud.
Yeah, it's McCloud.
I'm not going against McCloud until like the Bucknell game. Like Cignetti's not going to say before that game. So like, I don't think I'd go to Barnett until he literally starts against Bucknell.
Have I told you my hot take about Bucknell?
Sure.
That they're not going to name a starter even before Bucknell, and they'll say that they're splitting reps.
I don't agree, but I like the take.
Like, I think there'll be an or, and there'll be an or before Bucknell, and I think there will be an or after Bucknell. And I think McCloud will get the first half. I think McCloud will get the first half. Barnett will get the second half regardless. And we'll get an or before UVA.
Just for gamesmanship reasons?
100% game. I think he knows now who the quarterback is, and it's McCloud. I think for gamesmanship reasons, he's going to be using or until the very last second.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. It's going to be quite the few weeks.
But I mean, whoever is QB1 come week 1, come week 2, they will be protected extremely well, as they have one of the most experienced offensive lines returning. I believe, let me see, Tyshawn Wyatt, Cole Potts, Tanner Morris, Tyler Stevens, and Nick Kidwell all were the starters at the end of last season against Coastal Carolina. And guess what, Bennett?
They're all back.
Yes. How'd you know?
I mean, it's crazy. They're loaded.
And then they have, I'm reading exactly from your piece here, Ronald Altman, Carter Miller, Josh Toner, Joseph Simmons, and Isaac Owusu-Apia, all returning, who saw some action last year.
I think that was straight up the 10 guys on the 2 deep against Coastal.
Which is insane that they're bringing them back. Like, this unit has a chance to like put together, if the quarterback position is 75% as good as what Centeo did last year. This is, for the 5th straight year, the highest scoring offense in the Sun Belt.
Yeah.
Is that crazy to say?
No, I think they've got a really good chance because they've got talent at running back. They have depth at wide receiver and some guys they like. Offensive line is stacked. If the quarterback can play right at a high level, where even if it's like just not turning the ball over and sort of running the system the way you need to and getting 30 plus points a game, they're probably going to have a really special season. I think the fact that they're, I would say, elite on the offensive line is huge. I mean, I legit think they could have like one of the 25 best offensive lines in the country just due to the players they have.
Yeah.
And the test I like to do with myself is like, if that guy entered the portal, would he get major offers? Like Kidwell would have had crazy offers.
Yeah.
I think Wyatt would have had a bunch. I think the other guys in the sort of interior of the offensive line, Potts, Morris, Stevens, could have had some big time offer. Like, I don't know. They just look like they have like maybe 5 guys who are either elite G5 or Power 5 players.
Any of them have a chance to get drafted?
My guess would be Kidwell would be kind of the top guy because he's had like multiple years of hype. And I think he's the only one who's technically out of eligibility after this year.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. So I think that is actually insane. So the offensive line you would think would be, if they can retain like the coaches and stuff, they're due for a year where they lose like a lot of players. But anyway, if they can retain like a similar roster, they could, I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe they send a couple offensive linemen in the NFL in the next 3 years.
Yeah, it could be really fun stuff. That offensive line is going to be a lot of fun to watch this year. And then we'll wrap it all up today's podcast. Moving from JMU football, I think we have to talk about JMU men's and women's basketball.
We got some schedules.
That exasperated sigh is for the men's basketball schedule.
Tell me your thoughts.
I'm not a fan, Bennett. I'm not a fan. It's horse doo-doo.
You want me to go through the non-conference?
Okay, so real quick, let me do this because home non-conference games. Howard, Radford. Actually, I'm kind of excited about Radford. For everyone
All
who's
right.
not watching, there was a very aggressive high roll from Bennett. Buffalo. Some of our friends said Buffalo could be an interesting game. I just got to say, they're a sub 200 Ken Palm team, finished 500 in the MAC, and they are not a good team. That is not an interesting game. You know who I'm talking to. Keystone College. I heard they have the most Keystone Light sold per capita in the country. That's why they're called Keystone College.
Checks out.
Yep, that's a lie. Coppin State and TBD MAC opponent might be the most interesting opponent on the schedule, and we don't even know who it is.
That's true. That challenge, at least that gives them something. The Coppin State games need to stop.
Who signed it? Who signed that deal?
They have to stop. The fact that we went to Coppin State last year and lost at like 11 a.m. with officials who weren't on time is an embarrassment. The fact that we're like, yeah, come to like, just stop it.
Buy it out. Buy out that contract.
It's nonsense.
You know what's worse? Morgan State on the road.
And I don't know. I feel like they are always citing like they're near BWI and they can go home for Christmas. And it's like, that's 3 days before Christmas. It's not that long a drive to BWI.
There's also Shenandoah Regional Valley Airport.
I don't know. Like, if that's what you're doing, like, just don't play the game and let them go home for 6 days.
Does Byington think there's going to be some sort of goodwill by being like, okay, Morgan State, we'll go to you, and then maybe UVA will come back to us?
Yeah, it's like, we saw what you guys did. So, and like, I'm not against them like being like, hey, let's get our guys home for the holidays for a little bit. Like, totally makes some sense. But when you have that game and the rest of the schedule is also like super weak, I don't know. Just like, don't complain if you win the conference and you're like a 15 seed, even though you're good enough to be a 12. Like the strength, their net ranking is going to suffer unless they're blowing everyone out, which then you can kind of get away with it. So maybe you go so bad it ends up being good, but I don't know.
Well, they play Michigan State at Michigan State to open up the season. That's a fun game.
Sure, that's a great one.
For Michigan State on the road, we're going up there. Kent State on the road. The Cancun Challenge is on the road. I don't hate the road non-conference is the thing.
Yeah, the road non-conference is well, it's mostly fine. The month
of December is actually terrible. On the road at Hampton, a CAA school, at Morgan State, which is Morgan State now a CAA school?
I don't think so.
The CAA has been adding some random team.
They got Bryant in there now. They're building Coastal.
And then at ODU.
At ODU for the 3 ODU games. It's just a weird schedule. It's
not a good one.
No, it's frustrating because it's like at some point you got to start finding ways to play mid-majors that are okay at basketball.
Yeah, I'm not. Will I go to 2 or 3 non-conference games? No, but will I go to a few games this season? Yes.
Yeah, that's probably how it goes.
I was going to
schedule sweet.
Yeah. I mean, at home against EMU. I mean, when you can go against your crosstown rivals to open up the season, you have to do it. It's what I've been saying this entire offseason. When you can schedule your Division III crosstown opponent, arch rival, mind you, you have to do it.
Do you remember the men's team was tied with them at halftime?
Yes. Also,
I fired off a Bree Sports tweet calling them like a crosstown rival. Best tweet of my life. People got so mad. Like, we're not rivals. I was like, why is the score tied?
Hot take. You ready for this hot take?
Yeah.
Give me Bridgewater or EMU on a yearly basis over these Keystone College things.
Yeah, I would take that over it too. At least it's like, local.
Yeah. Home against Toledo, home against Longwood, home against VCU, home against Wake Forest, home against William and Mary, and then non-con starts.
They've got some good ones. They play at Maryland too, at Liberty. They play Michigan State in Mexico. That's their schedules. They always do a good job. I feel like every women's sports team schedules phenomenally well.
And then the men's team are like, Bucknell week 1, Bucknell week 1.
I don't hate football schedule, but men's basketball's got to figure something out.
UConn in November.
I don't know. It's crazy. Like, especially some of the, I don't know, like Hampton and Morgan State on the road. It's like, you're telling me you couldn't find anyone better who would agree to like a home and home with you.
I also
honestly play CAA teams again. Like College of Charleston would be a dramatic improvement.
There's also just not a lot of home non-conference games. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 during that first non-con stretch, and then a 6 later on in the season in February.
I think he tried to put them in terms of what he was telling Shane Metlin, in spots where students would be there, like he's still in town. So I get that a little bit, where it's like, all right, let's play games where like maybe people will actually be there. But at the same time, it's like if the game's against Keystone College, you've missed the point. But only one non-D1 as of now. I'm sure like 6 teams will back out of this Cancun challenge, and they'll just play like locals from Cancun who showed up.
Kind of like locals from Italy who apparently showed up on their games across the pond.
Shane Miller was telling Dave Riggert that like they thought the competition would be better, which is just mind blowing to me. That like, what? Like you do not know who you're playing? I don't know exactly how all that works, but it's kind of wild. I think it's kind of challenging logistically to find like good teams to play, but they're beating them by 80. That can't be that valuable for for anyone.
I imagine it was just a court of me.
It's just local Italians.
Hey, ciao, Bella. Hey, Mario.
Spaghetti, wagon wheels.
All right. It's gone off the rails. For Bennett Conlon, my name is Jack Fitzpatrick. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day. This has been the JMU Sports News Podcast, presented by Bet Online. See ya.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.